All right, we are at the buzzer episode 4. 4 episodes longer than I thought it would last. My co-host, as always, G, helping me out with this podcast.
How we doing? How we
Um,
doing?
we're good. I'm good. How are you doing?
Not so bad today, man. Not so bad.
Yeah, I'll make you feel better. We're 20 days from jump.
Really?
We're
From
20 days from tip.
preseason or
No, we're
regular?
20 days from opening night.
Whoa, whoa. That's really good news. That's best news I've heard all day.
There you go. We're 20 days from Jump Street, man.
Man.
It's always good to catch up with you. I kind of
Mhm.
enjoy this podcast for the simple fact that I know I get to talk to you at least once a week,
Yo.
twice on a busy news week. But let's get into it, G. Where do we start here?
Got to start with the main man, right? It's the holiday season. It's Mr. Jrue.
It, it,
it's a big deal where he went and man,
and why he went.
yeah. Yeah. How do you like the fit?
As a Laker fan, I despise it. As a basketball mind, I love the fit. The Celtics have been looking for a true point guard for years now, and they
Mhm.
finally got one.
Man.
They have the offensive weapons, and now they have a facilitator, which makes the Celtics even more dangerous.
Mhm.
So, we won't hold your Boston's gonna underperform prediction against you from a couple episodes ago, because nobody saw this one coming.
Yeah. That's the thing I'm curious about is did anybody see this coming? It's like, wow.
I did not see this coming.
Yeah. I'm still spinning from it, to be honest. It's such a shift of where I thought Boston would be this year, and it sort of fills everything they needed, and that's a scary thing.
Yeah, which is why, like, you know, I always say I keep receipts. I'll give you this one back, G, because I
I
think
mean,
this trade seismically changes the Celtics' outlook for the season.
yeah. Oh my gosh, yeah. It saddens me to say, but that was maybe the strongest uh, going from where you're expected to be to being a lethal team in my mind. So I'm
And
gonna,
if you
yeah.
didn't, and if you didn't notice, I titled this episode cleverly "Taking a Holiday." So there you go.
Yeah. Who do you think had the best holiday in terms of holiday life, and who do you think was the best off-season worker out of some of just random NBA across it?
Best worker in terms of work ethic, or best worker in terms of completing the roster?
Work ethic.
Work ethic, well, that's always a tough one because there's always new hungry lions
Mm,
coming into the NBA.
some people doing
Work
that
ethic
quiet work.
wise, I would probably say one of the hungriest players in the league, even though he's one of the oldest. I think CP3 would have the strongest work ethic going into the season
Mm,
because he's on a championship contender. He too is a facilitator and he just has to find the weapons. So
mm.
I'm very interested to see what CP3 and his work ethic brings to a team like the Golden State Warriors.
That's a really, really great point because I've been starting to get a little nervous about my Warriors as things get closer to tip off here. They're one of my fave teams to watch just for pure fun and purity of the game. But yeah, bringing him on is sort of the reverse of what Jordan Poole was, right? Who was
Yeah.
a shotgun wheeling and dealing dude with not much maturity, and now you're getting sort of the complete opposite. So maybe that's what they need.
Well, I don't know if it was a lack of maturity on Jordan Poole's part, but
Mm.
because he got punched in the face. So I don't
It might have been for lack of maturity. No.
I don't know who showed more of a lack of maturity,
Yeah,
the young buck who was standing up for himself, or the vet who decided he deserved a punch in the face.
yeah.
And by
Some
the way, that
lessons
vet
are.
is and that vet is still on the team. By the way,
Oh yeah, he's from a generation where maybe there was lines that you didn't cross, and if you didn't respect certain things, uh, there was a physical consequence. And I think a lot of the new generation is, yeah, probably rightly so, less sympathetic to that and aren't going to stand for it. And yeah, they probably shouldn't either, but I can see why.
Yeah. Well, Jordan Poole is now gone from Golden State.
He might
Were you
actually be a
relieved to
candidate
see
for
that
that.
move?
Yeah, and not to be a negative thing towards him, but I don't think he fit the culture in terms of what they were trying to do on the repeat thing. He got his money. He got the sort of, I'm maybe your second or sometimes third option, and he really took that like to the bank, and it was almost too much for what they needed to do. So being in Washington, he can shoot as many shots as he wants. He might have had the best off season, just resting, chilling. Like he's got
Well,
money.
I often wonder, is it short-term gain for long-term pain for the Golden State Warriors? Because in the short term, you keep Draymond and you go for another title. But is trading Jordan Poole going to be that thing that sets the Warriors back 5 to 10 years, and they just decided we're going for it now?
Yeah, because they didn't get really anything back other than cap space, did they?
Yeah, that's what I mean. They didn't really replace Jordan Poole. They
Hmm.
just kind of sent him away.
Hmm. It's an incomplete roster, I think, unfortunately so. And they've got those young guys that are going to be their future. But like you said, do they just maybe sacrifice that for the opportunity to strengthen one of the greatest teams of all time right now? Or do you let them play on an average team with young guys and try to build for the future? Obviously, as a fan of the game, I'd like to see them stack up this year and see what happens, right? But yeah, we'll see. We'll see. I think they're probably going to go middle of the road like responsible business people, but yeah.
I don't think so. I think when you have players as great as Steph and Clay, and I'm not going to throw Draymond into that group as much as he's a great defender, but when
Yeah,
you have
playmaker.
two two legends like that, and you have a chance to go all in, I think you take it because
Yeah.
your window is so short, especially a championship window. It doesn't
Mhm.
make sense to waste a year raising young pups, so to speak,
Yeah,
in the
especially you're
league.
talking dynasty here. A team that has been in the conversation
And
of
and and it's unfortunate because the Lakers did it too when they traded Lonzo and Jason Hart and everybody. They
Mhm.
took the now and will suffer for it later. That's the philosophy, and it's always been the
Yeah.
philosophy of the Lakers of
Mhm.
let's win now and suffer later.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's paid off in the sense that they have the most or second most championships.
No, they're tied, I believe.
Is it tied right now? That's interesting.
Are they not tied? I think they're tied.
Okay,
I'm
we'll get
not
back
sure.
to
I'm sure Celtics fans will correct me in the comments
that.
when
Yeah,
this live stream
we'll have to find one
comes
of those
out if I'm
Celtics
wrong.
fans out there. Yeah. Uh, I was going to
Hey,
say about Wiggins too. What do you think about
Celtics
Wiggins?
fans, give me credit. There's a Celtic in the background before there's a Laker on the podcast, so you can't call me too biased on that one.
Yeah, he looks good in the Celtics jersey too. I hate to say it, but
That's
yeah,
my peace offering to Celtics fans.
that's pretty good. Considering that
But
LA, yeah, they could have used somebody
if
like
you enjoy the podcast, though, like and subscribe, please. That's I know we
that.
have to scroll across the bottom, but it's always good to mention it a time or two, I guess.
I think so. Yeah.
But yeah, Drew Holiday. But the thing is, can the Holiday lead them to a championship?
Yeah, they got a lot of that golf energy, right? Boston is
If,
notorious golf energy. Like they have that
and they do.
Tatum, Brown, like got pretty passive dudes, but then they bring in Holiday, who's not a
Holiday's
pass.
got that dog in him,
Yeah, can he mobilize the
but they
troops?
also gave up Robert Williams. So
Yeah, beloved amongst a lot of the players there as the positive thing. But they need dog. They need to be serious contenders for what those guys are getting paid, they don't need good time fun guy. They need Jrue Holiday. They need Kawhi. They need guys like that are just no nonsense, looking to play to the best of
Uh,
their ability.
I'm gonna push back on the Kawhi thing when you say no nonsense. I think Kawhi's got a lot of nonsense in him, but we'll
It's
save that
one of
for a little later in the
yeah.
podcast.
Hey, this would
Um,
be a good one we can split on. I think we could go on that one. But yeah, do you
and
think they make?
huh?
I was going to ask if you thought he makes the Celtics a contender or favorite.
Uh, you know what? I really hate to do this because after my comments last week, it's gonna sound like I'm just being bitter. But I'd put the Celtics ahead of the Bucks
Yeah, defense wins
as far as
championships.
contenders. As far as contenders go, I would put the Celtics ahead of the Bucks. The
Mm,
Celtics right now, with the addition of Jrue Holiday, have fewer holes in their team than the Bucks do. Now that could change, but as of time of recording, that's what I believe. The
mhm.
Celtics have fewer holes in their roster than the Bucks do.
Yeah, and the coaching has a carryover that Joe Mazzulla has been there now for a number of years, and he's had the head coaching job for a full year, whereas Adrian
Oh, he
Griffin's
made a
coming
bunch of
in.
mistakes last year, though.
Yeah, and those are called learning, right? Learning experiences, whereas Adrian Griffin is going to have to make his own first mistakes as a head coach, where he's been sitting beside Nick Nurse a lot of these years. It's his turn to,
Yeah,
it'd be big role, a lot of eyes.
I would. My East looks like this. I'd almost put Boston as the favorite at this point, at number
Yeah,
one.
unfortunately, so sure, yeah.
Number two, I would have the Milwaukee Bucks with the addition of Dame Lillard, and you got the Greek Freak and Giannis Antetokounmpo.
It's such a
And
fun
I would,
combo.
and I would still put Philly at number three, and I'll tell you why. Because, as I said, we'll touch on this a bit later in the podcast.
Mm.
But Harden did report to practice, so I would assume that that means he's going to be on the court for the Philadelphia 76ers.
I wouldn't assume anything with James Harden, and I'm glad that you didn't have him as your background.
I wouldn't do that.
No, you got to
Even
respect
though
the
we
game.
film these on Tuesdays usually, maybe if I get a thumbnail of him eating a taco on a Taco Tuesday, maybe.
He does have some funny
But
outfits, yeah.
his drive is not where it needs to be to win a title.
No, I think, yeah, if you're a serious team, you're not looking to get him. And it's funny that the Clippers are looking to get him because it's, yeah, speaks to their whole mentality. That's,
Can I say one thing about the Clippers? The Clippers are always that team that gets in their own way.
mm, yeah.
The Clippers are always that team that goes out and instead of working their way through, and I hate to use the word process, but working the way through the process, they go out and they try to make a move and they outsmart themselves, really.
Hmm.
And it sets the Clippers back 2 to 3 years. It always happens. It's the way they operate in Clipperland, and because they try to follow the Laker model, but they don't do it correctly.
Yeah. And it's like, why you can't replicate that formula of the Hollywood heroes that the Lakers are. It's like that role's taken. You got to have something else, and just trying to build superstar team doesn't build an identity really. And it blew up in their face, man, for
No,
sure.
and you have to understand that the Lakers, when they build a Hollywood heroes team, as you'd like to call it, they
Mm.
don't go after the superstar. They always go legend hunting, and
Yeah.
generally they get their legend. See,
Hmm.
there's a difference between being a superstar in the league and being a legend.
Yeah.
Dame
Yeah.
Lillard, superstar. LeBron James, legend. See the
Yeah.
difference?
Who would you put in the
Uh,
legend category right now?
Stephen Clay, that's automatic.
Yeah.
Uh, I would put I would put Giannis in that category. probably as well,
Yeah,
just based on the fact that
two-time
he's got a ring and he's on the hunt for another, and he's won Defensive Player of the Year if I'm not mistaken.
MVP. Okay, I'm not
Yeah,
sure
I
on that
could be
one, but
wrong
yeah,
on that. I could be wrong on that. Don't
he
quote
might be
me.
first team all defense. That could definitely
First
be a
team all
thing,
defense, that might be it. Yeah,
which is still
but
amazing, you know.
as far as legends go, you got to put Joker's name in there.
I was gonna submit it. Yeah, two-time
You
MVP
put
with a ring.
Joker's name in there. There are legends, but here's the thing with today's NBA legends. The reason they're not as memorable as Michael, Magic, and Larry, for example, is
Mm,
they don't have that arch rivalry that Michael, Magic, and Larry had. So
mm.
when we talk about NBA legends, we have to go more by the numbers because there's no rivalry that we can compare with.
And what do you think that rivalry was? Was it like true competitiveness that those guys were all competing to be the number one? Or was it their teams that were so competitive? Like, I'm curious what worked for the rivalry then that's not now. Yeah.
I'll tell you exactly what it is.
Yeah.
It's nobody wanted to play together.
Mm.
It was that they were all dogs because it was I'm better than you and I'm going to prove it. And I'm going to take my squad and I'm going to prove it to you.
Mm.
That's what it was. There was no there was no LeBron's going to go play with Dwayne Wade. Back in the day,
Yeah.
LeBron would have been competing against Dwayne Wade.
Yeah. Okay. That's
You know,
interesting. Mm.
you know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
let me put it to you like this: in the '90s or in the late '80s, early '90s, you put Magic, Larry, and Mike on the same team, and you had a big three like the Heat had. Who's touching that team?
No, it would not be the legend that it is today, right? It would have been, yeah, totally different storyline.
That's what I'm saying. These players would rather play together to try and win chips,
Yeah, that's so
and
interesting.
they don't want to be the next Charles Barkley,
Mm.
including Dame,
Mm.
who just made his move for a chip,
Yeah.
and we'll see if he gets it because he might not. But
No guarantees in this.
That's the difference in today's NBA, and I'm not trying to be disrespectful to anybody in the league or any of you fans that love the way the league is today. It's just a fact. Those guys wanted to beat each other.
You know who's still
They
got
weren't.
that? Oops, sorry. I'd say
They just
LeBron
weren't
and Steph.
interested in playing together.
Yeah, yeah. The only two that I think are like that still are LeBron and Steph. I feel like they both have agreed that, yeah, like they would never join teams, right? For that reason, it's like, why
Well,
would
it's
I do
I've
that?
got four and you've got four. That's what it is.
Hmm.
It's I've got four, you've got four. Let's see who can get number five.
Which is totally the knock on KD, right? The whole shadow over his ring is like, if if you were supposed to be the guy that's the best to do the whole thing, that's how you do it. Not to negate his thing, but that's just the knock, right? From the people that appreciate the old style of play and what that meant for players, right? What that legend thing was, and his was different, right? He wanted a different story, and I think people just gave him flack because it is not the same. It wasn't just you being the leader, taking a squad of four dudes and winning the ship. You had three legends
Well,
on your team.
you think about it this, G. We have a lot of fun doing this podcast. That's why we do it. We love to talk basketball. We love to do the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
But let's say we went and acquired, I don't know, Charles Barkley from TNT. This would never happen, but let's just
Okay.
say we
Never
went and
know.
got Charles Barkley.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, our numbers went from 30 to 40 views on the podcast to $4 million. And you and I touted ourselves and we went, we're a big success. because 4 million people view our podcast. We're not a success. Charles is driving the bus. And that's what KD's rings are like.
Yeah. Yeah. And they can say he was an essential part to the team and all of that, but it's like, yeah, so was the water boy, so was the coach. Doesn't mean he was the number one leader, because we know he was not. He was number four. There was already a core that won championships there. So you're exactly right in that sense. And it shouldn't take away from his skill, but it doesn't speak to him being a leader that's
It
taking it.
doesn't take away
Yeah.
from the skill. It doesn't even take away from the legends conversation because he's
Mm.
a legend.
Yeah.
But also, it takes him out of the Michael, LeBron, Kobe conversation because he hasn't done anything anywhere else.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. It'll be interesting to see if LeBron has enough in the tank this year to make any sort of noise. What's your feeling on Lakers season right now? You've seen all these moves. You see Dame stacking, uh, Holiday now looking really good and green, and you got the Lakers didn't make a ton of moves other than their core Hollywood Heroes team. There they got Reeves,
Well,
Hachimura.
here's the thing. I'm a Lakers fan, but I'm an honest Lakers fan.
This is the type I can appreciate. Yeah.
Look, do I think we have a shot at winning the West? Absolutely. On paper, we have a shot at winning the West. Are we better than Phoenix? Are we better than Are we better than Denver? Probably not. But if everything goes right, the Lakers can win the West. But the one thing I gotta say is, Austin Reeves, will you please be quiet? I love you, Austin, but you gotta be quiet when you say we have the most talented roster from top to bottom in the NBA, because that's just simply not true.
Yeah.
I love the bravado and I love the confidence, but that's just simply not true.
Yeah, and I
And
think we've been.
that's how you know I'm being an honest Lakers fan, because I'll take the good and the bad. So
Yeah.
when I say things on this podcast, nobody can say, "Oh, he has a biased opinion," because I'll tear my own team apart if they deserve it.
Mm. Yeah, because would you say any of those guys that are role players right now, that have been released from Washington, that were unsigned, that were just, not like even Christian Wood, like just irrelevant, and they're getting scooped up by the Lakers, and then half of ESPN's like, my God, they look stronger than ever. This is what an off season, and I'm like, all right, I know you get paid to say this, but can you
Well, see,
speak
that's the great
in
thing about
reality?
me. See, that's the great thing about me. I'm not being paid by ESPN. These are
Yeah.
my thoughts.
And they
And
should
I'm
be
being
allowed
honest.
to say something true, but my goodness, it's like, how is that a stacked roster?
Are we better than last year? Yes. Could we win the West if everything goes right? Yes. But are we the best team in the West? No, we're not. We're
So,
not. Because I just gave you two teams that were better than us.
and that's if everything was perfect. So you got street clothes, you got 39 as your core, like blood and spirit to the entire thing. Like if either of those two pieces gets in trouble with anything, it's over in terms of being a
See,
competitive.
see that's what I mean. I'm not coming on this podcast telling you I'm gonna parade through Hollywood. It's just not there. Now there are years I will say that if I genuinely believe we are the championship contenders, I will say so. But this could not be our year, and I'd be okay with that.
Yeah, that's a fair
This year,
thing,
all I'm
right?
looking this is the healthiest thing I will say because I'm not emotional right now like I was last week.
That's a good
If the
comment.
Lakers can make if the Lakers can make the second round and be at least competitive, if not win the thing, I would consider that a successful season. Only because I put Phoenix, and I put Denver ahead of us. I think Phoenix and Denver could be, unless they play each other ahead of time, a Western Conference Finals match.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Big time. I think that's the favorite for it, wouldn't it not be? And then you got
See,
yeah.
see, I'm an honest Laker fan, and I know that Laker fans can be blinded by our own spoiled tendencies from time to time.
And
But
you get a lot of people saying what you want to hear, like on the TV stuff. Where I'm like, I'm curious if anybody actually believes some of these things, because I'm curious, like, what's your honest take about the Lakers roster? Do you see those guys as high quality role player, like savants that you would need to make yourself competitive? Because I saw the flashes of
are they?
Austin Reeves, but defensively, he got picked on in the Olympics, did he not?
Well, Austin's a little guy, and I'm not one to shame somebody. But at his height, he's always gonna have a defensive challenge in the
Mm,
league. And as far as Christian Wood, look, listen, the best way I can say this is when Christian Wood is on his game, and you got him coming off the bench for street clothes, that's when we're at our best.
mm,
It's when it's when street clothes and Christian Wood both have an off night, we're gonna look really bad because if they're not invested in the game, the Lakers are gonna get blown out, and that could happen on any given night. Because there are nights when Christian Wood can give you 20 points and 9 boards and 5 assists, and then there are nights where he'll give you 11 points, 5 rebounds, and 2 assists. So it depends on which Christian Wood shows up. That'll tell you how the Lakers are going to do, especially if AD doesn't feel like playing that night. So, so I will put it to you like this: if one of them has an off night, but the other one came to play, we still got a shot. If they both have an off night where they don't feel like playing, the Lakers could lose by 25.
yeah, I'm really curious because that's two moody big guys, like two guys renowned for being injury prone and moody. So it's like, yeah, it's got to work out, and it could be the most lethal thing ever. But that's sort of like the if everything was perfect
Now, I will
scenario,
also
right?
say that if they both come to play and we get 48 minutes from our bigs where they want to play, look out because we can win by 25 as well.
Yeah, I'm still curious who the other pieces are that you see as quality pieces, like Vanderbilt. Uh,
I'm not, here's the thing, I'm not sold on Vanderbilt just yet.
mhm.
I don't think half the season is enough evidence to be like, okay, that's a guy that I can depend on.
Yeah, so I'm
I
going through
really
the
think,
roster and I'm like, ugh.
well, it it depends on how you look at it. Because Hachimura can shoot the lights out when he can, but he's also kind of a defensive liability kind of thing.
Mhm.
And this is me like giving you an honest assessment of the Lakers roster.
Oh yeah, we
Austin
got a big
Reeves,
sample data.
Austin Reeves is the guy that he's the insanity of the group. He brings the energy. He can give you 15 points, but it's not a reliable in and out every night. I'm going to give you 15 you can count on type of guy.
And they're gonna hunt him like it's a wild boar season on
And
defense.
they're going to hunt him. And they're going to hunt him defensively. That's true. And as far as Hachimura goes, he can give you 2 or he can give you 12. He's
Mhm.
another inconsistent guy off the bench that when he's on, look out. When he's off, it's going to be a field day for the other team.
Mhm.
Like I said, I'm not afraid to sit here and give you an honest assessment of what I think this Laker team is. Because if
Cool.
I came in here and I said, the Lakers are going to win the title, nobody'd take anything I say on this podcast seriously.
Yeah, well, maybe you get offered a job at ESPN. You never know. You got to speak the language, right? They'll support
Uh,
that.
look, I believe. Look, as we build this podcast, I really believe people get behind us, and
Mm.
we won't need ESPN.
No, I agree. It's always this new media thing that's so exciting, right? Being able to actually have different, interesting conversations and perspectives that are more interesting than the shined up scripts that we get through that, right?
And I have no problem with ESPN, but I will point out one of their flaws is they can take a topic that started on Monday and carry it right through to Friday and just change the language, and
Mm,
that's very
yeah.
upsetting to me.
Yeah, there's a
I
lot of
don't.
good content you could have.
Yeah,
Mm.
like we could do this podcast every day if we wanted to, but what would we talk like? What would we talk about? Like seriously,
Yeah, it would be like those sports radio things they do on Sirius, right? Where it's, yeah, they have to carry the same topic almost like infinitum and talk about nonsense because it's like, all right, we got so much time to fill. Yeah.
like I don't mind if something big happens, like the Dame Lillard trade, and we just posted a pod on Wednesday, but we got to do a live pod to talk about it on Thursday. If there's an event, we'll give you a bonus pod.
Mm,
But
yeah.
this isn't gonna be an everyday thing because what you see how that it doesn't work. Gee,
Yeah, we got to have the quality over quantity, right? It's like when you have something to say, it's nice to have a forum to say it, but you shouldn't be forcing yourself to say something to fill airtime, right?
and we're fortunate because we're on a YouTube channel
Mm,
that we have the platform to say, do we want to do an extra pod or do we want to do, you know,
mhm.
one pod or two pods a week? We can set our own schedule. And that and if and it, let's say at some point we have, I don't know, 3 million subscribers and ESPN comes and says, we want to put you on ES, would you really want to go? Would you want to be part of the machine? I don't
only
think so.
only if I get an autograph from Brian Windhorst, and then we're good. And then I'll quit.
Oh, good old Windy. You know, for all the garbage I talk about ESPN, I love Windy. I got to say that.
Yeah, yeah. Shout out to the boss, man. He's taken the throne for NBA
But
commentators.
I just picked apart my roster, and oh boy, do we have something to talk about today.
Yeah,
Uh, do you want to start with the recent contract negotiations, or do you want to break the roster down first? Raptors fans' choice here.
yeah. Um, let's go with the first option. What was the first one you said? Going through the roster?
Yeah, let's go through the roster first, and then we'll talk about the negotiations.
Okay, I'm gonna pull it up here.
Let's
Just
do
put it on
that.
the other screen. Roster. Put you over here. Oh yeah.
Is
Okay. Yeah, they got a big roster going and not so I really think there's two pieces that are going to be overlooked, and if things go the way that I think Messiah is going to force them to go, they're going to be a sleeper like Cleveland, and it's I'll argue for that just through the roster here really quick. But let's start with the coach. Nick Nurse out, new guy in. Just immediate culture change because it was toxic. Something was toxic last year. Selfish play. That seemed to be the theme in the media day was selfish, selfish. Won't happen again from the top dog. I'm going to take his word for it. So we got Dennis Schroeder coming over, the MVP of,
I,
and people have their opinions on Schroeder, but exactly, he's that guy that you're going to have an opinion about. He's a pest. He's a clutch time decision maker that people have trusted, including LeBron.
the
Um,
problem is it can sometimes be a pest for your own team, but
oh, big time. He's a double edged sword, but I think in the right hands and the right organization, and he can be quite an effective point guard, especially for what the Raptors need right now.
I just want to point out that you said unselfish play, and you're talking about a guy who turned down $80 million because he thought he was worth more money.
I
So I'm
love that
gonna
you
poke a
remember
hole
that
right
too.
into your.
Yeah, yeah.
I'm gonna poke a hole into your non-selfish play theory right there.
He said starting this year, right? Because their whole last year was just a brutally self. I think they had the most ISO plays out of any team, and Pascal led the league in terms like ball hogging and shot taking and just ISO ball. Like, not the guy you want to play with if you're in the NBA. So he made it quite clear that if that guy, if the team doesn't play the way that he needs them to unselfishly, there would be big changes, which means fire sale. Right? I think it would go that way. But let's say it works. You got Otto Porter Jr. coming back. You've
I
got,
like that.
he's a sharpshooter and he's a mature presence. You've got Scotty Barnes coming in at 22. He's probably had some mentorship over the summer. He's former rookie of the year. And there was disgruntled stuff happening last year, right? There was toxicity. So we've pulled that out. Maybe Scotty has another breakout season. I think it's quite likely. OG and we'll say Pascal. I think those are your two big contracts, along with Gary Trent hanging on your head. But that three piece, if they're to play well together, I think is lethal. But Pascal is the biggest concern to me. And that's where I'll sort of take a very honest Raptors take, I think, is we are screwed if we still have Pascal on the roster come Christmas. Because his first thing he said in the press conference for media day after Masai had given his spiel, they're like, oh, well, what do you think of those comments of like not playing selfish this year? And do you feel like you had any part in that? He goes, I've never been a selfish player in my entire life. Well, statistically, that's incorrect. Statistically, last year, you were the most selfish on the team and led the league. Like, maybe in your head, you're not selfish, but your actions and team would say otherwise. So why would you say that as your first thing? To me, that's like a stubborn, I don't care what you guys think. I'm going
Could
to
it be the? Here's a legit
ego.
question. Could it be the Mamba effect?
What do you mean?
By that I mean Kobe. When you look at Kobe on the surface, you could there's a case to be made that Kobe Bryant was legitimately the most selfish player in the league. However, however, Kobe Bryant oftentimes was the best option on that team. So I present you the question, even though I'm a Raptor fan, I'm interested to get your take on this as well. Is it the Kobe Bryant effect where he feels like he doesn't have another option? Could that be part of the problem?
100%. I think that's the best, most accurate take I've heard yet on the whole Raptors situation, because he's at the crux of it, right? He's their centerpiece. And what he was saying in his media day interview, and I listened to the whole thing, was the ball ends up in the best player's hands. That's just basketball. And that's who has to take the shots sometimes. And he's like, that's me. He was essentially saying the Mamba effect. Like, I'm Mamba, so of course Mamba took lots of shots. And there's a huge argument to be made that he's the best player on the team, but he wasn't playing within the system. And the system wasn't designed to have a Mamba shooting like he was shooting. That early in possessions, that much ISO, that much, there was a system that he just wasn't playing according to. And it seems like his attitude's carrying forth that it's, hey, we'll do our best to follow the system, but in the end, give me the ball. That's like, all right, there's that double-edged sword, because you want your top player to want the ball, but I think the
See,
Raptors need
because
to be
that's
a
part of my
team.
problem with LeBron is he never wants the ball.
Okay.
Because when it comes to money time, LeBron would much rather pass the ball than shoot the ball.
And it's funny because he's had some clutch shots, like that half court three to burn the Warriors that one time.
But if you look at when LeBron is in his clutch moments, it's when he has to shoot.
mm,
There's 2.2 on the shot clock. He's dribbling the ball. But if he has the option to make the pass, he's gonna do it. And his defense will be it was the best basketball play. And I said this last week, and I said this last week, when you're the best player in the league, you are the best basketball player. So
yeah.
I wish LeBron had a little bit more Mamba in him, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. I think that's a really interesting point that I probably think that he has a debate on with coaches and players and stuff all the time that I think he probably does believe. And maybe sometimes he's right that they're looking no, to him being the best player and extra defense going that way, that if he passes the percentage shot for that guy who has that lack of defense on him because of the attention he's drawing is statistically the best shot for you to win that game. And if you're the most competitive guy, analytics are significant to a point, and if they're heavily weighing you got to pass that ball when the second defender comes, he's following what would be the most competitive approach, so it would be interesting to hear that conversation that he's had, because I'm sure it goes back and forth of, no man, you just got to take it because that's MJ, that's Kobe, that's you.
I have a counter to that argument though,
Okay.
and that is this: open for a reason. Simple as that. Open for a reason. Look,
Yeah,
look.
we went
If
through the
that second
roster.
defense, huh?
We went through the roster. When I think of LeBron, I'm like, yeah, there's a reason some of his teammates are open, Westbrook.
I was just gonna say if that guy's open at the 3 point line, but it's Russell Westbrook, that's not the best option.
I
I
mean,
don't care what
sometimes.
anyone say. I'm gonna as Skip Bayless would say. I can't believe I got to quote Skip on this, but I'm an eye test guy. I watch the games.
Yeah.
If Russ is the guy open at the three, that's the lowest percentage shot you got.
Hmm. No
That's
matter
my
how.
argument to that.
Yeah, it depends who and how open. I think that's for sure. So I think there's room to debate that both ways. But the key point would be clutch, and Pascal not being clutch. I don't think he's our clutch guy. Like I I did the eye test. I saw what he had when pressed, and it's impressive. And he's an all-star and first team All NBA candidate without a doubt here and there. But man, to lead a squad, to trust him to play within it when it counts the most, has not proven to be successful so far in the last 4 years. And that's a
Well, see,
big paycheck.
that's what's changed in the NBA. It used to be your best player was your leader. Now those qualities don't intersect as much anymore.
Mm. And I think that's going to be a problem, right, with money and status and class and stuff. Like if the most paid guy isn't doing the extra bits of coaching and showing up early and really being the leader, if you're on that team, you got to be like, man, I'm busting my ass, and this dude gets here at 10:30 in the morning eating his Cheerios and da 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 da. You'd be like, I'm only gonna do my, what I have to. Then, it sets a tone, and I don't feel like he's a leader that way, in the sense that maybe he does work hard, but he's not gonna go show the guys, this is how you work, this is
Should
how
be
you.
the first guy in the gym and the last one to leave.
And that's what LeBron says. He goes, when I stop doing that, that's when I got to retire, because that's my role. That's how I have always taken the game. And you want that maybe for your leaders, just somebody that does those little things and takes them personally. I don't see
See,
that in
and that's
past.
the thing. I often get labeled a LeBron hater, but you've heard me say legend status, and I give him his flowers. But
Yeah.
I'm also honest. I wish LeBron had that, and maybe he doesn't have it, and that's okay. But I wish he
Mm.
had more of that dog in him that's like, this is my game. I'm taking it over. Get the heck out of my way.
Hey man, as a Raptors fan, all I can say is there's been too many playoff series where he just came in like a truck and it was just like, oh my God, here he comes. And he just beat us over and over and over again. Sometimes at the buzzer, sometimes not, but his force and impact on those clutch plays would be nightmarish because he would just either get to the line or find somebody open. It was just very frustrating to be a Raptors fan for a long time.
I get that from the perspective of a Raptors fan,
Mm.
but a lot of the times the reason I don't give him as much credit for that is like he was a cat playing with his food. It was almost like I know I got these guys. I don't have to, you know. That's what I mean by I. Granted, I know you have PTSD from these Raptors, Cavaliers series,
Oh yeah.
but LeBron's a different player when he knows he has something in the bag versus when there's something on the line.
Mm. That's interesting. Yeah.
See, because if you remember those Raptors Cavs series, which I know you do, the Cavs
Fun.
dominated most, if not all, of those series.
Oh
There
yeah.
was never any doubt as to who was going to win that series. When LeBron knows he's got something in the bag, he's a different player than when the pressure's on the line when it comes to his legacy. Because you
Interesting.
look at when LeBron gets beat, it's always somebody else's fault.
Yeah, when you think about the Lakers last 2 years, how many times it's been like diva season for LeBron, where he's like, "Oh, we don't
Remember what
exactly
I
have
said.
sharpshooters." Yeah.
Remember what I said. When LeBron comes in drinking his wine in his red suit and he's got the sunglasses on or the shades
Blue
on,
sheets.
w-
Yeah,
we're in trouble. We're in trouble. I don't want to see that LeBron.
yeah,
I want to see the LeBron in the tracksuit who's ready to go and who means business.
yeah.
There
You
are
can
two
make things
different
better.
versions of LeBron James. It just depends on which one you're gonna get.
Hmm. And I think you can see in the early days here with media days and early practices, like I saw a clip from LeBron in practice. He looks locked in. He sounds locked in, right? First thing he said was just about keeping the mind right because that defines everything. I'm like, yeah, there, that dude's locked in. Like he'll be as good as he can be, and that's a scary thing. But um, yeah, for the
Talk to me
Raptors, they
in
don't
March.
have that guy.
Talk to me in March when LeBron comes in his suit with his wine and everything else. But if that happens, that means something's gone wrong because the Lakers are gonna miss the playoffs. If that happens,
Yeah, and he knows it's not long to the end of the finish line, right? Like it's getting really close to being it. And he's going to give it that extra juice like all runners do at the end of the marathon. It's like as he gets very close to the end, you're going to kind of just leave it all out there. And that's a scary thing, knowing LeBron. But like I would say the Raptors roster right now is stronger than the Lakers on paper. If you were to go through it, like honestly,
oof. Can the Raptors get along?
that's the big thing. And when your lead player comes out and says, I've never been selfish in my entire life. Oh, I got to think that sailed super well through management and the core, right? Like it, even if you don't believe you were, just say that for the sake of leadership and being somebody that's humble and willing to go with the team's new ethos. Like, yeah, we're not going to play selfish, and I'm going to take my ownership of that, and da da da.
Well,
Don't go on the defense. Like, if you're going to go on the defense,
well, I look at it this way, G. And I'm oversimplifying here, obviously. Like this is my YouTube channel. I got the little studio set up here and everything. But this is our podcast. I don't do this by myself. So whether this starts out slow and becomes successful or is successful off the jump, I didn't do it by myself. There's
Hmm.
two of us here. And that's one thing I think that Siakam's missing in his mentality is you've got four other guys on the floor with you.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter if you put up 35 and 10. If you lose, nobody cares.
And it seems like he's number one that doesn't care, right? Like he just seems like his attitude is kind of just stanky for the last 2 years of like, meh, I don't, grind, same,
See,
grind. Like,
see,
yeah.
that's the problem. Remember, right in episode 1, we were like, if we do numbers, great. If we don't do numbers, whatever. But we're gonna put the best podcast out there that we can.
Hmm.
Because if we're not, then why are we here?
Yeah.
Like
Win or lose,
when,
right? It's like that
like when,
attitude.
like like when the studio added the background colors, I
Mm,
changed it right away because nobody wants to look at a black background.
yeah. And nobody wants to see a player take 20 shots a game when they're losing every single game. you know?
I had that's called the Kyle Kuzma effect. I know that effect.
Yes, and that's who Siakam reminds me of right now. Is just like you're a better Kyle Kuzma. You're not as good as Tatum, but you're better than Kuzma. You're right in that, like,
You're right in the middle.
yeah, you're a young Jeremy Grant, you know? Like, not that's not a diss. That's just, man, you
That's
think
just
you're
the way it
king.
is.
Yeah, and his
But if we
perspective
did,
on himself is
but if
way
we
bigger.
didn't keep it a buck on this podcast, what would we be doing, right?
Mm, yeah. Yeah, this. Yeah. This is it, man. This is the idea that just do what you love, and if you don't love it, maybe don't do it. And it seems like he's caught in that world of like you can't stop now because you're a millionaire, but I don't see a dude that's
Is it the
loving the
money?
game.
Is
I
it the
think
money
that's
that
that's part of it, right? You can't walk away from money like that, can you? Like if you didn't want
I
to
don't
play
know?
basketball
ESPN.
anymore.
I don't know. ESPN or Fox hasn't called me today to see
Yeah.
if I'd walk away from that type of money.
Right? Like, Pascal, like, what if one day he was like, damn, I don't like this. I don't want to play anymore. But dude, you can't walk away now. Like your family, your community, all these people are standing to benefit in exponential ways for generations if you just play basketball.
Go through the motions.
Yeah, just be miserable, but you're gonna get paid, you're gonna get this, we'll make you as happy as possible on the outside. And uh super unfortunate if that's the case because I feel for somebody trapped. But as a Raptors fan, I want to see life back injected. I want to see like, yeah, something that,
Well,
yeah.
now that you mentioned somebody that's really unhappy, what brought to mind for me was Ben Simmons.
Mm,
Well, I know the talent is there, but there's a mental block with Ben that I just can't figure out.
yeah, I would call it part of the cell phone generation, but it's not that because it's a little bit past. I think it's the social media generation that when you look at the ratio of players that were supposed to be box office and have kind of had major mental slash attitude slash struggling to be professional. It seems like it coincides a lot with the rise of social media and everybody at halftime being on phones and stuff like that. But I don't know. I don't know if there's a
Would
generational
you
thing
put
or not.
Zion in that category?
Yeah, 100%. Where their circles were maybe less dedicated to seeing them be the best basketball player to help the team and more interested in seeing how big the business could get, how big the circles could get, how interesting life could get. And they're not wrong in that they make tons of money, but they're all kind of disappearing by the wayside in terms of relevance, right?
You know how I love to ask you random questions, right? Well, I got another one.
Hit it.
Is Zion going to be the biggest what if story in NBA history?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm going
Could
to say
we?
yes.
Could Zion be the guy that we're sitting back here 10 years from now? Hopefully, we're on episode 1245 of this podcast. I don't know,
Yeah.
but could
Yeah.
we be looking back at Zion and being like, what if the brother could have just stayed healthy?
I think we're almost there now. And, he's so young that there's a window. But when you
That's
look at
why.
people's
That's why I
patterns,
put. That's why I pushed it forward because I don't want to think that way. Don't
yeah,
get it twisted. I still wish the best for Zion. I want him to come out and put out all-star numbers, this, that, and the other thing.
man, they
But
need him.
in,
Yeah.
in the future, are we going to be sitting here talking about Zion as what could have been, man?
All signs point that way, like all indications from the people that are around him to the body that he's been blessed with, but also cursed with, to the just everything is pointing that way that he can't break through a certain wall of mental incentive almost, right? Like there's not enough incentive for him, for Simmons, for Ja to take it as seriously as MJ did and stuff because they're making so much more money than MJ ever did in his entire career that the incentive has become much different. And I think that's messed with their heads. They're so young and they come in and they're just being bombarded with this new world stuff and money at the heart of it. And man, the NBA really could have used, I think, the John Morants, the Zions, the Ben Simmons. Like those were some elite players. But when you look at Trey Young, you look at, a lot of these guys are all having the same weird mental sort of attitude blocks. And I'll be curious if we
How
look
do you
back.
think that? How do you think this is going to affect the NBA going forward in terms of their fan base and because the NBA numbers are dropping and you know
Interesting.
I always look at it like this, dude. Like, you have a favorite TV show?
Oh, yeah.
Do you
Watched a lot of TV.
just randomly do you have a favorite TV? I promise I'm going somewhere with this.
Okay. Yeah. For right now, say Raised by Wolves.
Right. Okay. Like, for example, great show, right? But what happens is as the years go on, they get gimmicky.
Mm,
Every show goes through this. It gets gimmicky.
I see
And then
what you're saying.
you're like, man, this show ain't the same. This ain't the show that I once watched before.
Hmm.
But you tune in because you feel obligated because you've been there for 8 years and it's the final season and you just want to see how it ends.
Yeah.
I think the NBA is now getting to the point, and
Mm,
it breaks my heart to say this because I've watched the game for 30 years.
mm,
It's getting gimmicky, man. It's
mm,
almost like the end of that. It's almost like the series is ready to come to an end because now we got play-in tournaments and we got in-season tournaments because we're trying to drum up interest and we're just reaching for anything we can to
mm.
create something.
Yeah. I think there's a missing piece for the NBA that they've got a bunch of new viewership coming in from the streaming side of things that I think is going to be inked with this new deal, but they're at a crossroads, right? With like, yeah, we've done everything, we've seen everything, we've like, there's no other crazy stories to do other than restarting the wheel, right? Sort of going back to square one, Celtics versus Lakers, make that a vicious rivalry, something like that. Uh, because I feel like stories go in cycles in some way, shape, or form, right? So if they're getting to the gimmick stage, it is time for a like, okay, everybody stop. Let's figure out better storylines. Let's figure out a better way to frame the NBA because it's got to that stage. But I think again, it'll restart. Somebody will be the new MJ. Somebody will be the new counter to that if they let it happen that way. If they, you know,
But
uh,
here's what my point is. When I was a kid, uh, it used to be Sunday mornings at 10 o'clock. You'd tune into NBC, and the NBA was must-see television with Ahmad Rashad, Marv Albert, uh, Cheryl Miller. and
Mm.
you'd have the East Coast game at 10 a.m. and you'd have the West Coast game at 12:30, and that doubleheader Sunday you look forward to it every week because you knew Marv would get you home, and the NBA was much must see TV. Now when I talk to my buddies, now when I talk to my NBA buddies, they're like, "Who is it?" Before they commit to watching the game. Who's playing
Mm.
versus must see TV. And
Interesting.
that's what I'm getting at.
So it's very star driven to a point of nobody cares about tuning in for a team. It's more about who's like, or tuning in for basketball. It's more about brand, team, and stars and stuff like that. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, because on Sunday mornings, it used to be there's a double header, boys. Okay, who's
Whoever.
bringing the chips? Who's bringing the soda?
Those are the
It was an
questions.
event,
Yeah.
right? Sundays used to be an event,
Mm.
and now it's just the Hornets versus the Magic. Oh, I'm not coming.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, why? So why was it interesting back then? What were the things that you remember when it was like a quote unquote lame game? What was it? The crew? Was it the presentation? Was it the package? Like,
It was the whole package because you had Ahmad Rashad
mm,
who did inside the NBA inside stuff, I believe it was called back in the day.
oh yeah,
And then you had Marv Albert, and you had commentary teams that you gave a care about,
mm,
and you had teams that everybody wanted to watch because the talent was more spread out. You had Barkley in Phoenix, you had Kemp in Seattle, you had Clyde
mm,
in Portland, you had MJ in Chicago, you had Isaiah in Detroit.
mm.
You know, there wasn't these centralized teams where you've got 4 stars and you got 4 stars on one side, you got 3 stars on the other, and we're all waiting for June in the NBA Finals.
Yeah, you know what? I see that as a major problem that so much of the big event stuff is so big, right? Like their big events are their biggest money draws, their biggest everything. So yeah, the investment in a Utah Jazz versus Hornets game on a Sunday afternoon is just completely unheard of, and will never get a national broadcast until you know time ends. Like,
My point is, the league used to be the draw. It's not that way anymore.
yeah. Do you think there's anything that would bring that back, or is that just a pastoral time that it'll take a
I could
long?
be living. I could be living in the past. I fully admit that. Right
Mm.
here, timestamp this. 102:58. I could be living in the past. But there was something about a Sunday afternoon where I could go, "Hey, G, basketball starts at 10. Get all our stuff done early. Come watch
Mm,
the game." And G would be like, "Absolutely.
mm,
Let's do it." Because back in the day, nobody asked who's playing. They just
mhm.
knew there was a game on. Didn't matter.
And you could trust that the stars would show up, that everybody would play, that it would likely be a half decent game, right? Because man, a lot of nationally televised games last year went the way of blowouts or star players not playing. So those are your chances to showcase your league to the wider audiences, and then you have this like you know half baked product. Nobody's coming back for those in between games. Nobody's buying league pass based off that. Nobody's investing their extra time to get more into it. They'll just go, oh,
No,
okay. You know?
and league pass comes from guys like you and me who grew up with the game and
Mhm,
remember the Marv Alberts and things of that nature. We
mhm,
still buy the league pass because we fell in love with the product.
mhm. Yeah, and still
But
want it
it,
to be that, right?
but it's like that. It's like the gimmicky thing I'm talking about. Now we have an in-season tournament. Like,
Yeah, I mean,
so you're gonna have a trophy for a tournament that's a regular season. Like what?
it's, it's like
Like
trying
what?
to, yeah, you're trying to fill a hole in the boat by Yeah, putting something that doesn't fit the same size. It's like, why are you putting that there? That doesn't apply to the situation. Like trying to get star players and the regular season to have more relevance is not going to be fixed by a random uh, thing with
You
very
know how
little
you
incentive.
you know how you get the regular season to mean more? Have a more competitive league. Have you ever tried that?
That's the big one. I would love to see the league split off because it would make games more accessible in the smaller cities and things like that for the non-top tier. But it would make those top tier games and the league such a good product. Like every single seat would be filled. Like I remember seeing nationally television games in like big cities where there's chunks of the stadium empty. Sorry,
Yeah.
going a bit. Um, that shouldn't happen with a national sports anything, especially when you're supposed to have a product like that. Uh, if you had it split up, maybe it wouldn't be such an issue. Shorter season, tiered league, that would be a change, not a tournament.
And see, here's the thing. If I have an option between a league pass game that's two good teams versus two bad teams, I might, depending on who sits out of that all-star game, flip to the bad game because at least I'll get 10 guys that are trying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, or if you have
At least I'll get
commentators or something that is of the product worth watching. But why would anybody watch something that nobody's playing to their highest capacity and nobody in the audience cares? Like that's not a product, that's a failure, right? So
I'll tell you this year it broke my heart because this was the first year I legit passed on the All-Star game.
mhm. Yeah,
I didn't
same.
watch the All-Star game.
Yeah, that was unfortunate that it's gone that way again. Opportunity that they could have made it relevant and decided to just go the other way and make it all
But my
about gimmicks.
philosophy is if they don't care, why should I?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. That's the whole regular season thing, right? Is like, if these guys don't care, why would I spend my precious time uh, watching them? Like I'd rather watch college basketball if it's going to be like that or something, or
And that brings me to
CEPL.
Kawhi and his whiny crybabiness that I've
Come
been
on, that
waiting for an hour to get to.
that answer
Uh,
he gave though when they told him about the rule, like asked him about the rule that was implemented, the response being what rule is like the funniest thing ever.
they should name it the Kawhi rule for crying
Yeah,
out
that's
loud.
how they've been referring to it. And his response, deadpan, what rule are you talking about? Like, that's the funniest, most Kawhi thing ever.
Well, see, he claims he's been hurt, right? Which he has been hurt. But look, you can play back to backs, Kawhi.
I've never seen a more secure individual in themselves like on a national team or TV stuff. It usually somebody's trying to at least accommodate the outside world in some way. Like James Harden, at least he'll dress up funny. He'll make a video. He'll do something that acknowledges the outside world has a relevance to him. Kawhi don't give an F about
No,
nothing because he'll tell you exactly what he means or he won't, and you'll never know. Like he's
well,
a
I thought his response
secure
was
in himself, you know.
the fact that he can flat out say no rule's gonna determine how many games I play was absolute. I was like, that's the most Kawhi thing ever.
Yeah. Yeah, that's like yeah, that's almost as much as like Siakam being like, I've never been a selfish player. What are you talking about? It's like, okay, that's a very, very bold thing to say. Kawhi, okay. Pascal, a little different. But
We
I
keep
think your
receipts
point makes.
around here. I
What's that?
said we keep receipts around here, Pascal. We're
Yeah.
gonna remember you said that.
Yeah, I mean, I hope the best for him as a player. I'd like to see him go to Golden State, to be honest, and be that extra piece they need there to be a consistent scorer, and then have some of the young guys, and maybe even Wiggins, if they could swing it.
See, uh, I respect Golden State for the way they built their team,
You know,
but the fan base makes me nauseous.
this coming from a Lakers fan, folks.
The fan base makes me nauseous because, and the only reason I say that is when I say, "Oh, you're a Golden State Warrior fan. What's in the history of the Golden State Warriors that makes you a fan?" And they think history starts when Steph Curry joined the Warriors. That's
That's right. We
ridiculous.
making history.
Oh, here we go. See, there
It's fun ball.
and this is gonna sound hypocritical coming from a Laker fan, as you said, but they have become probably the most entitled fan base in the NBA.
Yeah, yeah.
Come at me in the comment section, Golden State Warriors fans. You
They
have
got
become the
the.
most entitled franchise in the NBA.
Is it entitled though? If you've got 4 championships in a decade, is that it? 3?
No,
What?
no, I'm not saying the Warriors didn't earn their titles. I'm saying their fan base has become the most entitled
Oh, I
fan
see. I
base
see.
in the league. Sorry if I misrepresented myself on that one.
Well, I think
But I
their fan
stand
base
corrected.
is. One thing is the Oakland to San Francisco shift. I think is more significant than people think. Of like the Oakland fans are a breed of, we know Oakland Raiders fans. Well, it's the same city, right?
Yeah,
They only moved over to San Fran in, uh, God, I think it was a year ago, maybe 2 years ago. So I think
two
there
years ago, I
was
think
a
they
core
moved into
base.
space.
Yeah, there was a core base in Oakland that were the ride or dies from day one. But the majority, I'll agree that, yeah, including myself, are part of the majority, like 95% that came in when Steph started making headlines, right? And that's
See,
when,
and that's my problem because they always act like we've been here since like forever, and
no,
that's simply not the truth.
unless you have an Oakland accent and they are specific to Oakland. And yeah, you would be an OG and you would have one. And yeah, young
And
guys
look,
can
I
live
got
on.
no problem with bandwagon fans. I know a lot of bandwagon fans, and if that's how you enjoy the league, that's how you enjoy the league.
Embrace it. Yeah.
I embrace those fans because you're the casual fan that's the lifeblood of the league. Don't misinterpret what I'm saying.
Mm,
But I would put the Golden State Warrior fans up there with the Dallas Cowboy fans of the NFL. It's the
mm,
same type of thing. You always think you're going to win it every year.
mm.
You always think that you're the greatest show on earth, and that's a lot coming from a Laker fan. Take it from
Yeah.
somebody who used to be there.
Yeah.
Um,
They've got a lot to prove this year. Like, if any team's got the most riding legacy for this year, they're up there. Um,
Now, is this the Warriors' last dance? Is this their last kick at the can here? I think.
so,
See,
right.
that's gonna be the Golden State test. Is what happens when this team goes into the tanker.
As Wiggins goes, I think the season goes. It's kind of like Pascal in Toronto. It's like he's a very significant piece, and everything around that, for very different reasons, but everything around that will sort of determine the outcome of the season. Like, if Wiggins plays as the number 2 scorer, one of the best two-way players in the league, and does the things he can do, like that dunk over Luca,
Yeah, that was crazy.
that that still sometimes just brings me to a pause, and just like, that was one of the nastiest dunks I've ever seen. So if you've got a guy like that that can step up, but he seems like a question mark. All right, so I don't know. I got a random
So,
question for you though too.
oh, cool. I'm used to giving them, but let's hear what you got.
I made one quick note. It was 71 points, question mark. That was the top points put in last year by Donovan and Dame. Does anybody do 71 this year or greater? Yes, or
Woo!
yes or no, and
Oh,
who if yes?
woo!
That's a good one, right?
Oh, uh, give me a couple minutes to think on that one.
Because there's somebody
Um,
that knows they can do it.
it's
Obviously,
not a
like
question of. Here's the thing with getting 71. It's not a matter of if you can do it because a lot of people in the NBA could do it
oh yeah,
theoretically. Is can you do it under the right circumstances?
yeah.
But that wasn't the question. The question was, did anybody hit 71?
Mm-hmm.
And the thing is, anybody can get hot.
Yeah, there's
Let
sometimes
me
where
think.
yeah.
Could somebody do it? And if so, who was the other part of that question, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm. And yeah, is there a dark horse that would be a surprising answer that you could see?
I don't think Dame has the legs to do it. I'm
No.
gonna say yes, and I'm gonna say Devin Booker does it.
Oh, interesting. Interesting. Okay. I don't know if his team. Well, I guess they'll fall in line, but I don't see Bradley Beal giving up the ball enough for 71 to happen. Like the
But
two
but
circumstances
but
it happened.
but you're thinking about the Bradley Beal that was. I'm
Yeah.
thinking about Bradley Beal that is. They're two
Mhm.
completely different players.
True, and we don't know what this one really will be yet, so it'd be quite interesting to see if it's a pass first type guy. Because
And here's the other thing. Kevin Kevin will get his numbers, but Kevin's not about numbers. Kevin's about winning. And if he sees that Booker has a hot hand one night, he'll keep feeding him.
oh yeah,
And not
yeah.
only that, and not only that, there's no DeAndre Aiden to suck up the ball on the inside this year. So I
Can we
really
make?
think that legitimate, huh?
I was going to say, and we got to make a quick side note. Portland, just after we talk about this, Portland, we have to speak on the trade too because we haven't talked about that. And I think they're sneaky winners out of the whole thing, man. Um,
I
but
disagree, but that's the joy of the podcast.
yeah, yeah.
Uh,
So
it wouldn't be fun if
71.
we thought the same. It wouldn't be fun if we thought the same, would it?
No, exactly, exactly.
But no, I'm gonna say yes, and I'm gonna say Devin Booker gets 71
Wow. Okay.
or greater.
Okay. Yeah, I'll be curious. I could see he's done it, right? He did 81, was it?
80, I think.
Oh my God. That's insane. Yeah, and just all three circumstances of those, it's been teams that were not that competitive. Like I think Cleveland lost that game. I think Portland lost that game.
I
So
think Phoenix lost too.
yeah, they're not winning. Yeah, that's right. They did. So did Kobe? Oh, the only one who did it was Kobe when he beat who? The Raptors.
The Toronto
Uh,
Raptors.
That was
Basically, if there's something historic and you were on the wrong end of it, it happened in Toronto.
it's true, man. There's been some
whether it be
dunks on
the Leafs, the Raptors, or the Blue Jays, it's all the same.
there's a certain curse around there, and yeah, it took a bit for somebody to break it.
We
Thank you,
should probably
Kawhi.
talk about that. The curse of Toronto, and at the buzzer,
Yeah.
and at the buzzer special presentation, the curse of Toronto.
Hey, they're down here on the coast training for a exhibit during this week. I think they're at UBC, and then they have an exhibition at Rogers come Sunday. So
Yeah,
if you're out that way, look out for some supersized individuals.
yeah. So let's talk about the thing I've been avoiding for the last hour and 20 minutes. Let's talk about the Portland trade again.
I think they came out laughing when you look at their roster. Aiton,
Really?
Robert Williams, Scoot Henderson, uh, Brogdon, Jeremy Grant. Like these are all just quality assets. Chauncey Billups,
Are they?
Shaden Sharp, and Anthony Simons. That's a better roster than the Lakers,
I'm about to
minus
pull
the
apart your.
King.
I'm gonna pull apart your roster right here. Okay, let's go through those one by one, and I'm gonna pull them apart for you right here.
Hold on,
Okay,
I'll
so
pull it up
who
on
you want me
the
to come
screen.
at first?
Well, I think the easy targets are going to be Brogdon and who was the other one that they picked up in that was a older dude. Um, anyway, let's say Aiton. Those will be the easy targets for why it's not a good thing. I think Brogdon, former six man of the year, not that long ago, like a year ago, and
Father
Aiton, who's
Time's gonna
been,
catch up to him though.
yeah, yeah, it's one of those things. It's like if he's healthy, he's a sixth man of the year candidate.
But for him, it's also mindset, and is he gonna have the right mind frame to work in Portland?
Or do they
It's
flip him
e-
for more assets?
it,
I think
it's
he's still an asset.
it, it's easy to be in the right mindset when you're a championship contender like Milwaukee. It's a whole different mindset when you're in a losing situation like Portland, and it'll be interesting to see if Brogdon can carry that mentality from Milwaukee to Portland.
Do you think he'll even be on the team? Right? Like I could see them flipping him and Grant, to be honest. And if they were smart, they'd keep them as the mature leaders who are given a whole new set of instructions to be, not just guys that are chasing rings, but you're guys that are now going to be raising a team, right? Like you're half being paid to play and you're half being paid to raise an organization from where it's at to a future contender. And you need mature guys that are still like competitors on your team. As much as Haslam was great, it's like he's not playing any minutes. You got to have one or two vets, or otherwise you end up in the Jaw situation, or all those other ones, right? They had to bring in CJ just to put a cap on some of the stuff in New Orleans. So I don't know. I see them as potential quality assets and by far not like a write off, right?
Oh, I'm not saying right off. My question about Brogdon, because he gets inconsistent at times, is
Mm.
can he carry that mentality from Milwaukee to Portland?
Yeah, he's 30 years old here, it says, and that's about like, prime ish. Um, so we'll
We'll see
say,
what he's got left.
we'll leave Brogdon for a minute. Let's hit some of these young dudes: Shaden Sharp, Anthony Simons, and
When
Scoot.
did Sharp's cousin join the NBA?
Which one?
When did Shannon Sharp's cousin join the NBA?
Are they related?
No, I'm just making a
Oh yeah,
joke.
because yeah, I was like maybe shit, who knows? Um,
Okay, run those names again. Anthony Simons, unproven young
unproven,
buck
but
in the NBA.
definitely was showing flashes of like really high quality two guard and sometimes being the point guard alongside Dame. I don't
Yeah,
think
so was Austin Reeves. I'm not ready to crown him an all-star yet.
that's a very fair point. I'm going to give Anthony Simons a little bit more um, quality than Mr. Reeves, but we'll see. Matisse Thybulle, didn't see him there, but he's there too.
Yeah, but he's been on three teams in 3 years, and there's a reason you become an NBA journeyman. Next,
Robert Williams III, 25 years old.
that is that is the one piece I wish Boston, and I can't believe I'm saying this because it works to my benefit actually. That's the one piece Boston's gonna regret not holding on to.
Man, if him
As a
like, oh
as a matter of fact, I will go as far as to say that Robert Williams might be the best piece they've gotten out of the whole deal.
yes,
Out of both trades, Robert Williams might be the best piece that Portland got out of the whole deal.
yeah, because I think it makes all the other pieces work really well. Like
I don't know because I have a different view of Robert Williams. He's the defensive energy guy coming off the bench.
And he's your locker room guy to keep people positive. It sounds like just everybody loves him. It's easy to be happy around this person.
Yeah, we'll
That's
see
what
how much they love him when they're losing 50 games a year.
could be. Could be. I don't know what they're going to be like. They're my biggest question mark because of this weird mix. Like
See,
DeAndre
because
Ayton,
what's gonna happen is what's gonna happen. I don't mean to spoil Portland season, so Portland fans, if you want to watch, skip ahead to whatever timestamp that
but
was
I
in this.
I think they have a
But
heck of a starting lineup.
here's what's gonna happen in Portland. You ready?
Yeah.
They might get off to a decent slash mediocre slash maybe even good start in Portland. The rookies will hit the wall. The vets won't be able to carry them. They'll end up 39-52.
39 and 52. Okay, that's probably a very reasonable guess. I'm going to
Or
say
or 39-53 because it's 82 games.
they have no shame in tanking. That's why I'm like, yeah, they'll definitely end up under the
I'm
500
not saying
because
it's a bad thing.
actually I'm going to go the other way on this. I'm going to say they've made more moves than people think, and it's going to have impact in ways that put them in a position to be uh, play-in contenders.
Oh, he's not
That's
bringing the golf energy tonight, folks.
that's
There's
the
the take
hot
of the
take.
night right there.
I'm going to tell you their starting lineup right now. Scoot Henderson, Anthony
Rookie,
Simons, jump over man.
unproven.
Totally, but really high potential. Really high potential.
If I could pay my rent on potential, I'd be a millionaire.
Yeah, nice. Fair, fair, fair. Okay, so we'll say Anthony Simons has proven he's got a couple of years under him. Um, and what's his name there? Scoot has played in a professional league for a bit.
It
And he's
wasn't the
supported by
NBA.
no, that's true. He's got a lot to prove. So he's not exactly your highlight. So Scoot Anthony, Jeremy Grant, Robert Williams, and DeAndre Ayton.
Jeremy Grant's coming from Detroit. I like Robert Williams, and DeAndre Ayton only plays when he wants to. 39-53.
So DeAndre Ayton has been one of the most disgruntled players. Some would argue for fair reason. They effed him around on one, and then Monty hung him up to dry on a press conference. So there's been ongoing issues with somebody that's still shown up to work, didn't go the way of Ben Simmons because he was in a very similar
I
situation.
well,
They
no, I've
benched
talked
him.
to.
They
I,
benched him in a playoff game 6. Your number 1 center draft pick benched, and he came back and played. When they asked him to show up for practice, like he's
there are differing theories on DeAndre Ayton now. Because I've talked to some people last year because they were favorites when they added Kevin Durant with DeAndre Ayton to win the title. And if you remember that series, DeAndre didn't show up for that series. It
no.
looked like DeAndre mailed it in. Now, I'm not one to accuse anybody, but I see the eye test, and he did not show up for that series.
Would
So he was there in uniform. I'm not so sure he was there to play for the Phoenix Suns.
I agree, but did they do enough as an organization to make him want to? Because
They brought in the
Scottie
best player in the
Pippen
league.
showed up and went through motions even at one point, and it doesn't take
They,
away from Scottie Pippen's
they brought
potential.
in the best player in the league.
But there was something going on that was deeper, right? Since day one, there's
You
been
had okay,
conflict.
let me ask you this. Okay. If I told you at the beginning of the year you'd have DeAndre Ayton, Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Chris Paul as your starting four in Phoenix, what would you say the percentages of them winning a title would be?
Honestly, I would if I didn't have a opportunity to see any chemistry whatsoever at any point in history, and they had no organizational history with the Suns, like just a straight 2K roster. Like this is my picks on a non-Suns jersey.
This is your fantasy draft picks,
Like these are
whatever.
yeah. Then I think it's a What year? Not this year, not last year, because Chris Paul can't be a starting point guard for a winning team. Um,
Oh, ooh, ooh, you're just bringing the fire today.
you want to be able to stop people on the defensive end once in a while, right? Like he can't do both. He's he can't stop anybody on defense. Unfortunately, uh,
Wow.
Anthony Simons
Subscribe to
would
the
dunk
channel,
on
folks.
his face. Anthony
You don't
Simons
want
would
to miss
jump
that.
over him, sit on his head, and freaking, like there's no
Chris
athleticism.
Paul is the greatest point guard to never win a ring in the NBA.
Yeah.
And subscribe to the channel, folks, because apparently you don't want to miss out the buzzer with takes like these.
Yeah.
Oh
And I
my
would
goodness.
say the biggest thing with Aiton is that if you leave a job that you
He's
weren't happy at,
lazy.
let's hold on. If you were
Lazy.
unhappy in a job where they've been treating you like crap, let's say nobody knows all the details, but you know that you've been treated like crap and you're done with it. You're sick of it and you just want out. You want a new start because you know your quality, you know your skills, but you haven't been able to be happy because they've been messing with your money, they've been messing with your mind from day one. What are you going to be like when you go to that new job? You're going to be hopefully and most likely a way different person.
I look at it from a different perspective, and this is where this is what makes our podcast great, which is why I tell people to subscribe. You're telling me I'm going to leave a situation that had Monty Williams as the head coach, Chris Paul as the point guard, Kevin Durant as my power forward, and Devin Booker as my shooting guard. And I'm disgruntled when you have a
If
great team like that.
if I had
And
all the
not only
tea in
that,
China,
huh?
it's that old saying, like if I had all the tea in China, it's like, yeah, if you had all those guys, but you hated their guts.
That's only half the argument, though. That's only
Yeah.
half my argument.
Okay.
Now you're gonna go to one of the worst teams in one of the toughest conferences in the league. You've got a rookie point guard. You got an unproven Anthony Simons. Your only backbone is Robert Williams, who's had major back issues over the last 2 seasons. And you're gonna tell me you're gonna be happier in Portland than you were in Phoenix?
Big time.
I have
Big
a
time.
tendency to say I'm gonna disagree with you on that one, my friend.
The human factor, I truly believe, is sometimes more significant than a lot of people will give it credit for, because like the Simmons thing is a perfect example of Doc Rivers doing a cardinal rule break. Like there's certain things that most people know you don't do,
What
and
rule did he break?
throwing somebody under the bus and not taking
He,
responsibility as the coach. Buck stops
I
where?
would argue he deserved it.
Where does the buck stop? It stops at the coach on the press conference, not your 19-year-old player who's, yeah, played like crap, dropped the ball, but you don't do that at the press conference on national TV so that it can be played over and over again till his deathbed. It just isn't
Okay,
done, right?
so if I'll ask you the same question that they asked Doc Rivers, and you give me the answer that you think Doc should have gave. Uh, do you think you can win with Ben Simmons at point guard?
I think we can win when we're playing as a team that uh, follows the system, looks out for each other, just a stock answer, anything. I think we have a strong chance when we play as we planned, which is, hard. We don't give up and we trust each
Do
other.
you,
If we do
do
those
you
three
trust
things, we'll win.
do you trust Ben Simmons' jumper?
We're not talking about individual players here. I trust Ben as a leader on the team. He's We're not breaking down everybody's individual skill sets here. What we're talking about is winning, and I believe Ben's a winner, and that's why he's on our team. Is what I would have said.
Even so, you're saying even if you don't believe it as the coach, that's what
100%.
you're saying.
On the press conference media thing, barely anybody says what they mean or actually think. and that's part of the job as coach when you're in a playoff series and you've got guys' emotions going crazy. You read the room. Is
Okay, I'll give
is
you an
throwing under
example
the
here.
bus the best move?
I'm
And
gonna
that's,
I'm gonna I'm gonna give you an example of somebody who I respect, and
on the
that
coaching
is
side or the
on the
player
coaching
side.
side. On the coaching side, Jason Kidd was absolutely livid that the Mavs threw their season away. And you were talking at the press conference, you don't throw anybody under the bus. He threw the entire organization under the bus. So if
But he didn't
if
pick on
if
one person of being like, Luca's, we can't win with Luca on the team. Or, if Luca keeps bitching at refs, we'll never win. Like, that would be game ender. Luca would be in Toronto tomorrow. Like, it would just be
why is
over.
everybody going to Toronto all of a sudden?
Global, global. It's where the money is. It's the global.
You missed on Kevin Durant, you missed on Dame Lillard. Now you're moving on to Luca.
We're waiting
But
for
my
the right
point is,
one.
my
Yeah,
subscribe to the channel, folks.
drop. Yeah.
My point is, I can respect somebody who's honest, and J Kidd was honest.
Circumstantial. I think honesty is essential, but how are you using it and when?
Circumstantial.
Yeah, don't do it on the press conference where you've singled somebody out, because it's just not done. Like, nobody does that, right? Like, no coach has ever done that in recent memory to their star player who's having a really hard go, and they go, "Do you think he can make it?" Going, "Nope." I think he's not going to help us win. That's never happened out of any press conference
But
I've
he
ever
never said.
seen.
But he never said he wasn't going to help them win. He said he was unsure.
Everybody knew what that meant,
I
right?
just,
Like, it
I.
was a direct shot.
But everybody. My point then is everybody knows anyway.
Yeah. So why make it a public record thing? Like, it's just decorum. It's a serious thing of, like, you broke the code, right? Between player relationship. I think a lot of that stuff, of course, people break the code, but Doc knows better. And he did it because he was frustrated. And that's an immature thing to do as a coach when the guy's 20 years old, you know, like, sure, he's a piece of S. Sure, he's an attitude. Sure, he's a diva. But that your job is to protect them. Your job is to make them better and your team better, not to make them feel like a loser, not to put them under the bus, not to make that a fodder for this world's social media. Like, he gave them cannon fodder for that.
The
Like,
world knows anyway.
yeah, but it really became like gasoline. Like, even the coach said it. Even the coach said it, and it.
You think you think what Doc said changed my opinion of Ben Simmons one iota?
No, I just think it inflamed the situation that was already quite sensitive, and it didn't help the situation. And that's exactly what happened in Phoenix, where it was like, okay, you need to handle your business, coach, and he made it a public shaming situation. When's the last time you've seen anybody publicly shamed into being a better person, player, anything?
Tony Parker did it to Kawhi, and Kawhi is not better for it.
I can't think of, honestly, anybody getting publicly shamed in any realm, not basketball, just like anything where they've been like, oh,
Tony Parker did it to Kawhi.
I don't remember that. I don't think I was watching that season.
Tony Parker tore his quad. That was the same year that Kawhi played 9 games for the Spurs, and Tony beat him back on the floor. And Tony said, "I tore my groin. Why are you still on the bench?" And then Kawhi was a Clipper the next year. But
Wow.
I think,
Or Raptor, you
I
mean, right?
think, I think we talk about accountability, and I
Mhm.
think all Doc was doing was putting the accountability where it needed to be. Ben knows he needs to be better.
But the whole thing is, why did you do it on the social media like you did it on the press conference. Like everybody knows. So why would you go to the one place where everybody can replay it a billion times across the world? Like, why say it there? And that's his whole
So you're
thing.
like, shut the door and tell them you're a piece of garbage and we don't want you here and we're gonna trade you.
Or just do a good coach thing, which is like, hey man, we've tried to make you fit the system, but you're killing us on these things. We're not going to be able to play you in the end games anymore because of this, unless you develop that part of your game. But I don't want you to take it, personally, but I can't do it. This is just informing you of how it is. And then they can make their decision as players to grow or not. Shaming is different than accountability, right? Accountability is that private conversation, team conversation, even. But a whole world shaming and making fun of you, just that's partly why I think he's not changed whatsoever from what I've seen is nobody's been shamed into being a better person. It just doesn't go that way. So I think DeAndre said, see you later. You could put every all-star in the world on that team. And I think he's like, I'm miserable. I'd rather be in a place where I'm happy and valued as a human being than in a pot where I have a smell of anger and distrust. And
And I always say at the end of the day, it's about chips, right?
yeah, and
He just threw away his best chance to win a chip.
I
Period.
mean, they traded him, but it's also because there was a long-term disgruntled. So it's like it just wasn't going to work.
My
Maybe it's like a
my
relationship.
point
Doomed.
is my point is simply this, and maybe I'm thinking too logically about this, but my point is this. You were in the playoffs. You're in the second round and you quit on your team. You weren't being traded before the playoffs were over, so you might as well go get your ring. You
Yeah,
quit on everybody. You quit on the city, and it made you look bad. And you expect me not to call him out for that?
not necessarily call him out. Just I'm curious what he's going to bring to the table because I don't think it defines him. Just like it didn't
And you got
define Scottie Pippen,
and you
right?
got Monty Williams fired because of your temper tantrum.
But we don't know all the details, right? We never know all the details, and that, with those conflict things, I'll always try to measure my opinion on it being that I don't know all the details. So who's taking care of their business in professional ways? Monty did the cardinal sin thing again too. Like he did the well, I don't think he's up to the task or some sort of public shaming thing.
The eye test shows me that he wasn't. If I
Again,
surround you with
all
the
fair,
talent,
all
if I
fair.
surround you with the talent, it's on you.
Yeah, and what you could repeat that to him 1,000 times in private and practice and during the game. Like they remember they had that like almost fight during the game on the one of them. It's like fine, but don't put it on the thing where you're like, I have the power now because I have the mic and I know this will go viral. And he said it anyways. It's like, man, you're supposed to be the father in the situation. You're supposed to be the mature. I don't care if my kid freaking made a tantrum and did this and that. I'll handle him privately, but I'm not going to go up there and shame my family. Right? Like,
I just have a different philosophy because you're not going anywhere until the playoffs are over. Go get your ring and show people you can win.
I got where my mind is going here. Chris Rock said it in his
Oh, here
last
we go.
stand-up special. And it's not curses, not anything like that. It's just he talked about the Will Smith thing in the sense of, don't do that stuff in public. Like if you're gonna like we handle our business, if we're gonna be doing acting the fool, if we're gonna be having conflict, if we're gonna be doing anything, like not in front of the white people, he said. And it's sort of like the same thing. It's like not in front of the media, not in front of the people that can continue to hurt you the most, especially when you're supposed to be on the same team. And I just think it's a low down bad move for a coach. And it's like accountability for a coach has to be there too. And that's as bad as quitting on your team, I think. So both are guilty in my mind. And I want to see both have a better life.
Don't get me wrong. I wish DeAndre well, and maybe he will be the player that he was supposed to be.
Could, yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah,
but he didn't exactly set the world on fire before last season either. And he got paid $133 million. So
I feel like he's the biggest question mark in that he's not super
I'm
injured.
I'm not I'm not letting him off the hook, but let him show me that he's changed.
Yes, I'm up
Show
for
me you're
that.
not show me you're not if he doesn't quit on Portland, you might have a point.
Better
But he
yet,
quit on the Suns.
what if he comes with the chip on his shoulder? Like, you guys made me look like a dud for 5 years when I'm a number one draft pick who should be winning chips. I'm going to come out like a dog and just crush.
Okay, again, my counter to that is we put four all-stars around you and you couldn't win squat. So show me you
Circumstantially,
can do it.
yes, the evidence doesn't suggest that he would be any different, but we don't have any evidence of him not
But
in
but
Phoenix.
he's young. Here's where I'll
25.
cut him some slack because I've been hard on DeAndre this podcast.
Mm.
But he's young. Hopefully, he'll take this as a learning experience. And even though Monty's not innocent either, DeAndre, go play ball and prove me wrong. I want to be wrong.
Say, I want to
That's the
see
thing.
him thrive. I want to see him as
I want to be wrong.
a badass
I want to be
Bahamian.
wrong.
Yeah. Like, could you
That's the biggest
imagine
takeaway
Scoot
here.
throwing alley oops to Aiden with a chip on his shoulder?
That's
Ooh.
my biggest takeaway here. I want
Ooh.
to be wrong.
Yo, imagine Robert Williams taking the big away from Aiton. Scoot throws up an alley oop because they only have a small dude for on Aiton now because the other guy went on Williams. That's a really cool combination of two guards, two nice, like Anthony and Scoot, plus those two bigs. And then at the three, you have Jeremy Grant and Shaden Sharp. I'm seeing a half decent squad, you know, like a little
Where do
bit
you
of
have?
question marks, but
You know what? I'm gonna put you on the spot. Then
hmm.
you said you see Portland contending for a play-in spot. I believe is what you said.
I really believe that as I read that out and sort of have these talking points. Like, I love Sharp, I love Simons, and I think they can actually win.
We'll have to see how that goes. To be honest,
Mark
and
it
like
down.
I said, I don't wish ill will towards DeAndre, but show me something now.
And let's not forget that they also got a ton of draft capital back. Um,
No, that's going to be important down the road. But what I was going to say is, I forgave James Harden when he left OKC too. Okay, you got a fresh start. But remember, with James, it became a pattern. No, I want to go to Houston. I want to go to Brooklyn. No, I want
yep.
to go to Philly. No, I don't want to play for Philly. It's possible. It's possible that
Which way is
DeAndre
it going to
becomes the
go?
next James Harden.
Totally. Totally. It's going to go one of two ways, right? It's either going to be a disgruntled, overpaid superstar who doesn't win championships, gets numbers, or it's going to be a dude that pivots in his career and writes a new storyline, which I would love to see and think is the perfect time and perfect team for him to do that.
Like I said, I'm hoping that I'm wrong. I
Yeah, they're
never
one to
want to see a
watch.
young dude fail.
Yeah,
But
they'll
from
be
what
entertaining.
huh?
They'll be entertaining nonetheless, right?
Oh, for sure. And don't get me wrong, because of the whole Dame situation, I'm rooting for Portland.
We still need to think about picking a game and see if we can't get down to Portland. You could cheer Aiton in person.
Portland and Milwaukee. Go down to Portland for Portland and Milwaukee.
Ooh, that would be a freaking gong show in that. Oh, that'd be a good time.
At
Um,
at Moda Arena, I think that's what they call it still.
yeah, yeah, Portland would be a fun place to catch a game, man. And speaking of other competitive teams, um, did you have any specific ones you wanted to go through here? Because I was going to pull up the rosters of the Celtics and Milwaukee just because I'm curious on depth. right? Like depth is kind of the biggest thing when we're talking chips. If we're thinking about odds and who's got the best chances and all of that, tell me who's got the depth and the goods. Like who are your favorites right now?
Well, the depth and the goods are two different things. Because I think there are young teams that are building depth, and then there are teams that have depth.
Mm,
Like, like I think Portland is building their depth right now.
yeah. Yeah.
But I think that,
Yeah.
but I think there are teams that already have depth.
I'm
But
looking at Boston and I'm
unfortunately,
not seeing a lot.
no. And that's the thing. When you pick up a Jrue Holiday, and you'll notice the same thing in Milwaukee, is you trade away a lot of that depth. Uh,
Man,
Brooklyn's got Brooklyn's got depth because of the Durant trade, but I don't know if they're solid enough to make a run in the East.
all right, folks, this is no official bet. This is not official gambling advice, but I'm going to say right here and right now, if my depth theory carries any weight for this season, Portland and Brooklyn are going to be higher than whatever Vegas says, right? Like they've got quality pieces that I think are getting
Yeah, but
overlooked.
here's the thing. Here I agree with you on Portland or on Brooklyn,
Mm,
but I want to see Portland first
yeah.
because Brooklyn has already shown me that they can win without a superstar.
Hmm.
And by win, I mean be competitive and make the playoffs. They've already done it. As a
Hmm.
matter of fact, Brooklyn got worse when they added their big three somehow. It didn't work.
Yeah.
But it'll be interesting to see because now Tatum and Tatum has a facilitator to help him with the offense now. But
Yeah.
Boston Boston's gonna be struggling with depth because they just traded it all.
I am looking at the roster and I'm just not seeing it. Like in terms of who are you bringing in? They got nothing. Svi
A lot of
Mihailuk
lot of league minimums, a lot of league minimums.
almost exclusively.
Yeah.
Nobody's talking about that. Nobody's talking about the fact
Well,
that they have zero bench right now.
in 2 weeks we'll have a discussion because we'll have our season preview.
Yeah. Oh, okay. So who's got the deepest team in the league right now? That's a Denver, maybe. I don't know. That they maybe that's a question for next week. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, because I think there's going to be some
I
conversations
think
to
we'll
be
title
had.
next week's episode In Depth Analysis.
Yeah, yeah. Get right into some of the nitty gritty stuff. But is there any main things that came across the desk over the last week of storylines during media day and stuff like that that caught your attention?
Siakam's contract stalled out. How do you feel about that?
Very uneasy in the sense that there's no resolution and I'm not liking the attitude, but excited that there's a potential for change in the future of one way or
You-
another. You know?
You're not excited for the Canadian Mamba?
Yeah, the only Canadian Mamba that I will recognize is Jamal Murray because that dude is a thug. He is a bad, bad man. That's no hot take there, but underrated, underspoken of. Like,
Underappreciated.
yeah, yeah, and still is just going to be blowing people's minds. Like when we talk about MJ and like wanting the ball at the end of the game because it's like, yeah, you're gonna do what's
That's one
necessary.
of my favorite movie quotes. And this is why I'm so hard on LeBron because I like the Replacements movie, and one of the lines in that movie is "Winners always want the ball when the game's on the line."
Yeah.
And it seems like we have players in the NBA that shy away from that.
Yeah, and it could be because there's always an ego going on. Whereas you see a Joker who's like, they interviewed him after a game once. They're like, "Oh, is it like tough to decide who's going to take the last shot?" And he's like, "Huh? No, we give it to our best player, who's Jamal Murray, and he's like he was just so matter of fact, humble about who's the clutch, serious
But
dude.
he knows. He's recognized that. That's the
Yeah,
difference.
there was zero doubt. He was like, "How do you not know this?"
It's
It was
going to Jamal.
yeah. He's like, Jamal's a monster. He's like, we give it to him. Yeah.
See, and that's what I mean. When LeBron doesn't take the shot, I'm like, oh man, not again.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Yeah.
not even asking you to make. Here's the thing with me and LeBron. I'm not even asking you to make the shot. I'm
Just take
asking you
that.
just please take the shot.
Yeah. If you take anything from this podcast, folks, take your shot. You miss all the ones you don't take, and you could have a legacy of being a trying things. There's something to be about.
Careful in the comments. You'll have some schmuck saying I shoot my shot with this woman and she turned me down. It's all your fault. And you'll get a lot of
Yeah.
flack for that next week.
Hey, Rolla, you got to try.
just that Chester fried in the Pepsi, brother. That's all it is. Chester
Hey,
fried
that's
and
it.
chicken in the Pepsi.
Classics are
But
classics for a reason. And yeah, I trust Masai long term that he's got something cooked up, but Siakam makes me very nervous right now in terms of his whole attitude
well,
and
I'm
stuff, right?
I'm still upset that they didn't trade him for the 3 first-round draft picks to Memphis. That's my thoughts on Pascal.
Interesting. They didn't do that. Hey, wow. Oh,
They'd
that was
rather go out
OG
and
too.
that was OG. Sorry, my bad.
Yeah,
But
and
they should have
again,
made that move.
yeah. If they were going to
But
blow it
no,
up,
they
that would have
traded
been
they
good.
they traded a first rounder for Jakob Pertl. But that if you want to know my thoughts about Jakob, go back and check last week's podcast.
Yeah.
We got about 3.5 minutes here. Any final thoughts as we are approaching the buzzer?
Man, I'm just getting really excited seeing all the people starting to show up again of familiar faces. Watching all the Raptors media day, it was cool to see guys that you don't see in the mainstream headlines and stuff, like a Gary Trent and Scotty Barnes, and just talking Raptors specific, but also on the wider media day. It was cool to see Dame in a Bucks jersey, man. It was cool to just see the new things shaking
No,
out.
it wasn't. No, it wasn't.
It's from a pure basketball entertainment point of view. It's something, and I thought Jimmy Butler's hair was absolutely priceless. I mean, that dude shows up. He shows
We've
up.
been having some fun with Rolo on the hair meme there, but that's another story.
It's the
But
Cat Williams,
yeah,
right?
we we have approached the 2 hour mark here,
And
pretty close to it. I
last thing I
can't
was going
believe
to
it.
say, go ahead, go ahead.
You go ahead,
Oh, Shay, that's one word, Shay.
Shay. Shay Gilchrist Alexander. We
Hmm.
like to promote the Canadians on this podcast,
Oh,
as
yeah. I
we
mean, he's
should, as they're going
exciting
to
as
the
heck.
Olympics.
Oh, smooth as you find any point guard in the league right now.
But anyway, we'll be back next week with At the Buzzer podcast, episode 5. 19 days is to jump as to when this podcast will be live. Um, as I always like to end these episodes, may your ego come from a place that keeps you humble. I'm Mo Money. Mamba out.
This is
Any
G.
closing words, G?
Have a week.
You bet. And if anything happens, we'll be back to cover it with an emergency pod. See you
Mm.
next week.
Ciao.